Today I'm going to be demonstrating how to do a whitewash technique. This is one of my favorite techniques. It is so easy and so beautiful to do. So a couple of things that I have to do this technique are mixed paints. This is already mixed with BB Frösch Paint Transformer to make this technique really simple and easy to do. I have a large BB Frösch paintbrush, and then over here I'll have a paint tray, a huck towel, water, a tablespoon, and a mixing whisk. For my sealing step, I have clear wax with a wax brush and wax towel, which I will demonstrate at the end. My paint is already mixed with BB Frösch Paint Transformer. So I just took this color white, I'm gonna pour it right here on the tray, about that much to get started with. I also like to have some other grays, maybe different shades of whites, blacks, browns on hand in case I wanna add those in here. Now you want this kind of drippy, so you can see right here, mine's still pretty thick. I'm actually gonna grab a little bit more water. What's really cool is you really cannot mess up this technique. It's so easy to do. So once your paint is kind of drippy, take your brush, start at one end of your piece, moving with the grain, go all the way across. Then immediately take your lint-free huck towel and wipe. Now right here, I'm feeling like I'm not actually seeing enough of the grain that I want to, so I'm actually gonna add a little bit more water to my paint. Now, if you're not seeing enough grain, go over it quickly so that the paint doesn't dry. Like this. Then you can start to see this grain go through. The same works the other way. If I was seeing too much grain, I could add a little bit more paint. This is really, really cool to do. You'll repeat this step across the whole table. Now it's really cool is if I wanted to add in some other colors, I could really easily. So just make sure, especially on these round things, you go all the way to the end of your piece like so. Now this is really working nicely. I did sand this piece ahead of time because I could not see the grain. It had years and years of green paint buildup on it, but this technique will work beautifully on anything that has grain or even the appearance of a grain. You can see right here just how beautifully this grain is showing through, and it is just incredible. I'm loving it. So one of the reasons that I use a paint tray is it's much easier to control the amount of paint and the amount of water you're using rather than dipping directly into your jar of paint. So you can even see on here how I have this pretty wet. You want your paint and your water mixture to be pretty wet. I'll just go over it a couple of times. Make sure any excess paint or water is removed. Just kind of repeat that and play with it until my whole tabletop is painted. The reason for wiping as you go is so that the paint doesn't seep into the wood and lift the grain. So always make sure wipe immediately, and then you can go back and add more texture and color or water or paint if you wanted to. I'm just gonna go ahead and finish this tabletop with this color. And I actually think I'm just gonna stick with the white. I'm not even gonna add in any more grays because it's just really pulling some beautiful colors with this table, and I'm loving it. You can, if you want to, remember, add any colors you'd like into this and it can still be considered a whitewash technique. I'm, for right now, just gonna stick with the white. Don't forget to get the edges of your piece. I like to do these last so that I can have a really good eye on them rather than just reach across and not be able to see something. Remember, just paint and wipe right away. While I'm letting the top of this table dry, I'm going to demonstrate how to make your own chalk paint so I can paint the base of this table. So I'm going to have BB Frösch Paint Transformer, my mixing jar, paint, and water. I'm just going to be using one of these sample sizes from your local hardware store to mix up to be able to paint the base of this table. So I'm going to first take 2 heaping tablespoons of BB Frösch Paint Transformer to about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of water. Now what's really awesome is this is not super scientific. You're just after a donut glaze consistency. And I like to mix my powder and water first in a jar and then add my paint to here. Just grab my paint, pour it right on in there. Perfect. And then just start shaking. You will know when it's all the way mixed when you can no longer see any white. So see here, I can still see white powder. Just mix a little bit more. And get it all the way mixed. Then you're ready to go. Lifted the table up onto, actually another table, but I lifted it up so that it would be easier to get underneath here. Now a couple things I want to talk about before I start painting. You'll notice I did not sand all the way through, but did sand enough to smooth. This table had a lot of crap and gunk on it that if I just painted over would have looked worse. So I did sand to smooth this, but not all the way through to the grain. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started painting. I like to have a couple different size brushes on hand. Sometimes these small ones are good for getting in these nooks and crannies, but I still consider this a fairly large area, so I'm going to be using a large paintbrush. So I'll paint from a paint tray, pour my paint just right on there, and get started. Now, one of the techniques that works is to paint in cross-hatch strokes, so that you have that self-leveling component. Oh my gosh, this has awesome, awesome coverage. This is only one simple coat so far. I noticed there's a couple areas you can see right here that will be much easier to get with my small brush, so it is really nice to have that on hand. But I'm gonna continue with these cross-hatch strokes all the way up this whole entire base of the table. And this is just gonna turn out really, really awesome. I'm just using my small brush to get in these little nooks and crannies. That really helps with some of these little tighter areas. And then I'll switch back to my larger brush. Now that the top of this has fully dried, I'm going to be waxing to seal and protect my work. I'm going to be using BB Frösch Premium Finishing Clear Wax. I'm also gonna use a large wax brush for this one. My large wax brush here, and I'm gonna take my wax wand and just kind of butter the end of your wax brush. This will help you to not get too much wax in your bristles. I'm gonna start from one end and go to the other end with the grain for this clear wax right here. So I'm just gonna start here, go to the other end, back and forth like so. So you can kind of go a couple of times with your brush, but then immediately wipe off with your lint-free wax cloth, and that will help remove any excess wax. You will know when your wax is fully cured when it no longer feels tacky and starts to shine up. So you can come over this in a couple of minutes to get even more of a shine right here. As I start wiping, you'll start to see it start to shine up. The nice, awesome thing about BB Frösch wax is it dries and cures within minutes. I'm going to show how awesome this wax is. It dries and cures within minutes. So I'm going to do is just pour a little bit of water on here. You can see how it just pulls right up and sits right on top of here. You can just wipe it up like no problem. Don't forget to wax the edges and the base of your table to seal and protect all of your hard work.